Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin again. Please find your way to your seats.
Is everybody ready? Let's review a little bit of what we talked about so far. If there were some cardinal principles that you could follow to let you know that as a parent, you were being effective, some of the ones we talked about so far, first and foremost, is your awareness of yourself. What are you bringing into that conversation with your child? Are you bringing all of you? Your strengths and your challenges so that you can wear your challenges with sincerity, authenticity, and with a degree of enthusiasm. Saying, hey, well, I'm not particularly good at that, but let's see if we can find somebody that is. Or is what you're bringing to that conversation your awareness of how bad you feel about that challenge? Because when you bring it into that space, into the relationship with your child, that's the quality you bring to that moment. Bring your own shame, your own poor self-worth. That's what you're teaching your child about how it's done. And this, I share with you, is not in an effort to encourage you to feel guilty for not knowing everything. This is to help bring awareness to how you do it now. Because we all know that our present is not our future. And neither is our past. Our past is where we've been, our present is where we are, and our present is also where we build the foundation of how we're going to move forward. So you look at where you are now, and if you feel a little upset, a little frustrated, that's not the experience that you want to spend a lot of time in. You acknowledge that experience. Man, I should have known that. When you use words like that, what are you doing to yourself? You're telling yourself you should have known everything. My job was to know everything. I was supposed to know this. You didn't. But now you know differently. And when you know different, you can do different. And that's the key. Becoming aware of what is effective and what is not effective. So when you're aware of what's not working, you can just say, yes, that's it. That's been the disconnect. That's what's not working. Thank goodness I realized that. As opposed to, man, I should have known that. It's a totally different experience of that new information. You feel guilty for not knowing, or you feel grateful because now you know. You see the difference? One makes you want to pull back and feel bad about yourself. One makes you feel empowered and grateful, and look what I can do now. And that's an experience you can model for your child as well. So that awareness is key. Also being teachable. If you weren't teachable, you wouldn't be sitting here. If you weren't eagerly looking for new information, new ways to see things, new ways to do things, you wouldn't be here. You're here to learn how. In our conversation here today, you're also learning why. Why do you do it the way you do? It's not enough to know how to do it. If you don't have the beliefs to support how to do it, you have no good reason to do it at all. There's no reason why you should do it. You don't care about it. You're not passionate about it. So being teachable, being eager to learn, willing to learn, embracing the part of yourself that doesn't know. The only way to satisfy that part of yourself is to know things, learn things. Because you want to teach your child to be passionate about learning, asking for help, learn new strategies, learn new information. The only way you can teach them that is to support them in that journey. Do it with them. Be curious together. Every day is about learning new information. One of the greatest adventures Kathy has with the boys is taking them to the public library. Oh, you don't know the answer to that? I bet you there's a book. Yeah, we could send them on the internet all day and they'd never know what the outdoors look like. Or we can get them out and require them to engage the librarian. Look for the book. How do we find it? How do we problem solve it? Let's go on an adventure where we can solve a problem together, instead of beating ourselves up because we didn't know the answer already. One comment that I hear coming up a lot, not only in the conversations during the break, but during this overall discussion, there seems to be a common experience of guilt among you. Is this correct? Do you know how I think of guilt? Guilt is when you take the step of beating yourself up because you hold yourself personally responsible for the things you cannot change. That's what guilt is. When your child is hurt, upset in any way, you feel guilty because you could not prevent your child from having a human experience. The experience of things not working well. The experience of having their feelings hurt, of being disappointed. Because you couldn't prevent it, you feel bad. You feel guilty. And yet those are experiences of life. How can your child learn what they're made of? How can they learn how to bounce back? How can they learn how to push through resistance if they never experience it? Your role as a parent is not to protect them from pain. Your role is to teach them that they can push through it and emerge out the other side okay, better, stronger, wiser. Your job is to support them through the journey, not to protect them from the journey. Does that make sense? And to feel guilty because other people hold themselves to a low standard, which unfortunately can be the bureaucracy of our public institutions, where they decide that their job is not to hold themselves and the other members of the learning community, the classmates, to a higher standard to support each other. Because it's all about coming together and actively competing with each other for whose hand gets raised first, who finishes the test sooner, who gets the highest grade, who gets more stickers. Gee, that prepares us for being part of a community, doesn't it? When we're actively encouraged to be better than the person next to us. My job is to be smarter, faster, no more answers than you. I feel successful when you look bad. That is modeled in our classrooms every single day. We wonder why there are bullies in the classroom. It isn't all about what happens at home. It's also about the mindset of the classroom. It's important to be smarter than, better than, faster than. And that spills over into the playground. And as helpless as we feel as parents to change that, we still have absolute say in what happens in our own roof. Our oldest son, 13-year-old, is baffled by the fact that he is not embraced by his peers because he won't sit there and use the F word at the lunch table. Because he won't pick on other kids. He's a gentleman. He's polite. He shows respect. Why does he do all that? Because he receives it. That's how he is treated by us. That's what we put in the space when we interact with him. We put listening, patience, compassion, camaraderie. If we break the rules of the house, Kath or I get mad and we swear, there's a jar that has money in it that we put there. Because if we have rules in our house, we are all responsible for maintaining them. We have shared accountability. So if Kath or I break one of the rules, the kids are allowed to call us on it. We encourage them. And when they do, we say, oh, you're right. We don't reserve the right to be hypocrites at our convenience. Well, I had a darn good reason, you ticked me off. Therefore, the rule doesn't apply. Didn't you read the fine print? But no, you have no flexibility because I'm the parent and you need to do what I say. That's not parenting with purpose. That's parenting with convenience, with inconsistency. How can your child learn what the rules are if the rules keep changing? How can your children find any reason to trust you if they never know where you're coming from? So that's another principle of effective parenting. Consistency. If you are going to preach it, practice it. Make sense? I want to make sure we get some of the content in that we discussed. I definitely want you to know. Did any discussions come up over the break? Any questions? Anything become clear? Anything you want to share? Any burning questions that you want to ask? Yes?
I have a question about discipline.
Ooh, discipline. This could keep us here all afternoon.
I have 3 kids, and my oldest son and my middle son, I think one has PD and the other one is on the spectrum higher than PD, but they set each other off, and they'll throw things, and they'll hit each other, and they'll throw things off the table. How do you discipline a child that just, if you put them in a timeout, they sit there and they laugh at you. They have no idea what you're doing. They have no understanding of what a timeout is. And no matter how many times you say, sit down, you're on a timeout, they look at you and laugh and then get up after 2 minutes that you make them sit there and do the same exact thing over again. How do you effectively discipline them without blowing up and yelling at in their face, and they still laugh at you then?
The first part of her statement was that she has the 2 older children.
I have a almost 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and then an 8-month-old.
Okay, so how old are the older 2 you referred to?
The 4 and 2-year-old.
Okay. The 4 and 2-year-old have very different ways of engaging the environment. They set each other off.
Yeah.
Sound like our house, Kath? Okay. We have a visual, an auditory, and a kinesthetic. They have different ways of engaging. One wants to sit down and watch. The other one wants to make noises all the time to self-regulate, so the one who wants to watch wants quiet and tells the other one to shut up. And the one that's very kinesthetic wants to move and do somersaults and everything, while the other person who is visual can't handle the visual distraction and tells him to sit down, but no, he needs to move so he can feel regulated. Sound familiar? And your question was, how do you discipline? Is the problem discipline?
I have no idea. I mean, how do you get them?
These are kids, first and foremost, with dysregulated nervous systems, yes? Every waking moment is about staying regulated. And when you have people, you have things in your environment that dysregulate you, and you're working so hard to stay regulated, might you not get upset with the person who's dysregulating you? The first problem to solve here is self-awareness. What do they need? Where's the disconnect between them and the environment? The 4 relationships again? Where's the disconnect between them and the other people in their environment? I need this to feel calm. I need this to feel regulated. When you do that, I feel dysregulated. But how do they communicate that now?
Time out.
They communicate it by throwing things, hitting things, pushing.
But if you put both of them in timeout and sit them down for 2 minutes and say,
What have you not done?
Well,
you are punishing. What you're doing, and this is common amongst all parents. This is not just you, okay? You are punishing their method of self-advocacy. They're doing their darndest to stay regulated, and because the way they're going about it causes you problems, you want to get them to stop it. Stop causing me problems. Sit in timeout. What they need is self-awareness around why they do what they do, what problem it's solving, and how the way they're solving the problem causes you a problem.
How do you make a 4-year-old understand that? I mean, I sit down and say, you need to stop throwing things. You're throwing things at your baby brother and hitting him on the head, and yet he takes it and does it right again. How are you supposed to stop him from doing that without...
There's more to that statement, okay? Say, when you do that, it makes me need to do this.
Yeah.
You explain what it stops you from doing, because when they're in that moment, the world disappears. They have their need, they have their problem, they have their frustration, they act on it. The only time you get involved is when you have full awareness of how it didn't work for you. You come in and you start having a conversation about, you did this, don't do that, that's bad. They don't learn why they did it, what problem it solves, or how they can do it differently. They learn, this isn't working, stop it, go sit over there.
How would you suggest doing it differently?
I suggest that you explain it. I understand. Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge whatever feeling you think they're exhibiting. Is it frustration? Is it impatience? And you say, I can see you're frustrated right now. The way you're doing it is causing this problem for your brother, it's causing this problem for me. And if you do it this way, then I have to stop doing this, and I can't do this for you later. Basically, what they need to see is, if they require your intervention, in exchange for you losing that time, they need to give the time back to you by not getting something from you later. So if our kids want to go to the park, I wish I could take you to the park, but I spent half an hour pulling you off your brother. So this is how I get that time back now. It's reciprocal. It's win-win. It's a trade-off. If you like to go to the park, let's talk about it a different way. You can handle your frustration with your brother so that I won't have to stop what I'm doing to come over here. And if they don't honor, first of all, a timeout is just teaching them how to wait. It's not teaching them to reflect, to learn, to consider, to come up with an alternative plan. Again, a timeout is just another form of stop it. If you're sitting there and your brother's there, you can't engage.
I mean, they're angels when they're by themselves, but then when they're all together, it's like a tornado.
But by themselves, you mean without you or without the others?
Without the other kids. Like if I separate my two older boys and one goes with, Dad to the park and one goes to Target with me, they're angels. But when I put the two of them together, it's all over.
Okay. So it sounds like there's some sibling rivalry happening there too?
That's possible.
Because when you have kids that are competing for the same resources, which is limited time and attention from their parents, if they do things that require you to attend to them, that's how they get it. Because it's effective. It's not ideal, it's effective. We try to raise our kids to be appropriate. They're not interested in appropriate, they're interested in effective. I'm going to do this because it works. Well, stop messing with your brother. Okay, so if I stop messing with your brother and give you what you want, you're going to go back to what you're doing and not give me attention anymore. Yeah, I see what's in it for me. Or I could just continue to do what's effective, and you'll stop what you're doing, you'll come over here and give me your undivided attention. So one thing you can negotiate in exchange for them getting together civilly is attention. You will have more time to give to them one-on-one, more in a way they want. If they don't require you to give them the attention they don't prefer. And of course, from a platform where it's just you sitting out there, I can't give it to you in as much detail as possible. That's what I'm able to do with my clients that I work one-on-one with. We break down the situation into its finer details and tell you specifically what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and what feedback to get from your child. Because when it comes right down to it, your relationship is negotiated. You have a discussion and agreements about how to do us. How do we do our relationship? With your wife, with your son, with your mother, with your friend. You have a conversation about, this doesn't work for me. This would work better if you did this. You must have that same conversation with your child. How do we do us effectively so both of our needs are met? As opposed to just reacting when your needs aren't met. Don't say why your needs weren't met. Don't even say what your needs are. And then punish it and hope they get it through some kind of osmosis. And you know why you don't do that? Nobody taught you how. You parent the same way you were parented by people who didn't know how to parent either. They did their best to prepare you for the world without knowing consciously what tools would be the best ones. So you are not responsible for how you were raised. You are, however, responsible now for filling in the gaps So you are far more effective as a parent yourself.
I was going to say,
You were going to say, or you are going to say?
I am going to say. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I understand how they set each other off, and a lot of times, you know, it's a regulation issue, so they're crashing into each other and things like that. I think an effective way is 2 things that work for me is to process what's going on later. So like just yelling at them in the moment, they're not there anyways because they're already in that meltdown, so you're not going to get any, you know, effectiveness out of talking to them about that in the moment. Wait till later when the situation's calmed down, and it's more effective for them to understand what it is that you want. Another thing that I would suggest is that maybe you could, you know, it's okay to separate them sometimes. You know, especially like when mine come home from like school, you know, they're like all over the place, they're not regulated. Letting them have their own space is an okay thing sometimes.
Not only okay, absolutely essential. Because if you see 2 people in a space together and they are not in communication, they're not connected, what's the point of continuing to stay engaged in that way? You need to separate them. You need to give them a chance to cool down, de-escalate, discharge some of that steam. You ever been in an argument as adults saying, okay, we need to take a break. You know, let's take a walk, let's cool our heads, and we'll come back. You ever done that? Do it with your kids. You do it because you're avoiding things? Or because you realize you're not working from the most effective, resourceful places of yourself, and you need to collect yourself so you can come back with a clear head. Is that why you do it? Because there'll be some people who don't want to let go. Don't walk away from me. You're trying to avoid the subject. How do you handle that? You can say, I'm not trying to avoid it. I want to be able to hear you. And right now, I'm feeling a little frustrated, and that's making it difficult for me to hear you. I need 5 or 10 minutes to collect myself. When my mind is clear, we'll come back together where I'm better to hear you, so we can deal with this subject, not avoid it. And when you separate them, tell them how to use that time purposefully. Again, parent with purpose. A timeout without any sense of how do you do that? What do you do with that time? And don't say, I want you to think about what you've done. Okay, I'm well aware of what I've done. I just did it in pretty recent history. What you would like them to do is think about what they can do differently. How else can you do that? Not think about why what you did is wrong. Because you're inviting them to think poorly of themselves. What can you do instead? What can you do more effectively? Let's have that conversation. And when you say it's important sometimes to deal with it in the moment, especially if they're really on top of each other, because sometimes the kids can be aggressive, yes? That is not the time to say, what's not working for you right now? Tell me what's coming up for you. What word would you put on that feeling? Now's not the time to have that conversation because they're not in that place. But if you need to pull them apart because safety is an issue, you let them know, this is how I'm dealing with it now. Later, when we're all calmed down, we will discuss this. Because if you just have that intention, okay, well, this is all over, and now they move on to something else. But if you prime them for that, let them know, later we're going to have this conversation, now it's in there. They know it's coming, they know what the topic is going to be, and hopefully they're done a little thinking about it. Okay? Now, since you talked about communication, and this is all about communication, because relationships are based on our communication. There are some statistics out there that I've seen time and time again that says communication is 7% verbal, meaning words only, 38% vocal tone, the volume, the pitch, the speed, the rhythm, and 55% body language. When you are dealing with a child on the spectrum, this is a lie, these statistics, okay? You must learn how to communicate as though nonverbal did not exist. Pretend that your vocal tone, your body language has secondary or minimal usefulness at all. The majority must shift to the verbal, the words, not just spoken, written. Because if you have a child that's nonverbal, saying, use your words, You're wasting everyone's time. What you want from the child is concrete communication in whatever form they can give it to you. If they need to give you a tweet, a post on Facebook, texting from one phone to another even though you're in the same room, however they need to give it to you is how they give it to you, as long as it's concrete. These statistics, by the way, in my opinion, is not how communication works by nature. It is how communication evolves in a culture filled with people who are afraid to talk to each other. Because they send a lot of nonverbal signals hoping you'll figure it out. Because they don't want to self-advocate. They don't want to ask for what they need because they might not get it. They don't want to ask for what they need because it's a sign of weakness. So they send all kinds of nonverbal cues hoping you'll figure it out so they don't have to take the risk. You see that? I think these statistics are cultural. I don't think that they're human. I don't think by design we are expected to decode one another. I think we all have the ability, and many of us are proving it today, to simply step up and speak our minds. Because when you negotiate a relationship, you can negotiate honesty. You can negotiate communication and say, hey, if something's not working for you, let me know. Tell me. And in order to honor that agreement, I'm going to be grateful for that feedback. I'm not going to go off on you. I'm not going to say, that was so heartless, that was so rude and so insensitive. How can you say that to me? Well, why would I respond that way when I asked you to give me this feedback? I asked you to give me this feedback so I can be more effective in doing my job in this relationship. You put it out there, you negotiate it, you agree to it, and then communication is no longer dangerous. There's no longer a need to hide behind your nonverbal, your signals, your looks, your glances, your gestures that you hope the other person is paying attention to, picking up, and decoding the way you would like it done. We are not psychic. We do not read between the lines. We need to write on the lines, because that's where we're looking. We need to ask for what we need. We need to allow others to ask us. First, we need to accept the fact that we have a right to that. Thoughts on that? Yes?
How do you think we teach your child to cope in our culture?
Cope? How do you teach a child to cope in our culture? Can you expand on that?
If you've got a child who, whether or not it's what should be, our culture is what it is. Our teachers, our bosses are giving us body language and expecting us to respond to it. Do you purposefully teach? I have purposely taught my 10-year-old, what does this face look like, Jared? Is it happy? No. What should you choose differently?
When you do it that way, you are not teaching your child to rely on nonverbal communication.
So how do I?
You asked him a question. You said, look at this face. Is it happy? If he had answered that differently, might you have clarified with him? Said,
possibly.
No, it's unhappy. The important the important thing to teach kids who don't decode nonverbal, because I've worked with some kids that don't even see it. There's something called face blindness, where they're listening to you might not even have a face. Spending all your time teaching that child to recognize facial expressions instead of how to ask questions to clarify, you are rendering that child completely helpless because you're trying to teach them to communicate and connect your way instead of the way that will be effective for them. What you first and foremost need to teach your children, and this is how I figured it out, because nonverbal communication is inconsistent. So what I've learned is that when a person moves a certain way, they use a certain tone, a certain facial expression, I know it means something. I don't assume that it means happy or sad. So what I've learned to do is to clarify. Say, oh, when I made that statement just now, your facial expression changed. Can you tell me how you understood what I said? So I invite them to tell me what they're thinking, what they're feeling. instead of assuming that what they did with their face or their gesture is somehow universally consistent. Because what it means for this person does not necessarily mean what it means for the 10,000 other people. Because our experiences are very unique, very subjective. How many times have you been with your child who's acting out and you put on a fake smile? Yeah, I'm okay with this, even though I want to beat him in front of strangers. You ever done that? If you teach your child to rely upon facial expressions and they see a smile, what do they think? What do they think your experience is in response to what they're doing? Mom's pleased. Mom's happy with this. She loves my contribution. And then when it's all over with and you leave and you start scolding him, you embarrassed me and how dare you? Wait a second. I thought we were having fun. It's also in that moment where you were inconsistent, your facial expression did not match your actual feeling, and you also did not clarify and communicate in a concrete way to your child that what they were doing was not effective for you. So all of you who think that it's really important to teach your kids nonverbal communication, do you ever have misunderstandings in your relationships? Not at all? Is that because that you don't have any friends, keep the doors locked, and it's just you and the cats? If you think you don't have any misunderstandings, you are either in complete denial, or you and the people in your relationships are lying to each other to keep the peace and do not self-advocate. We have miscommunications. Why? Because we do not have immaculate perception. Because there are holes in how we take things in. That's why we need to clarify. That's why we need to figure out how to communicate with each other. So we're always touching base. If things are good on one day, does it mean you can slack off? All right, I'm married now, and we're in. That sealed the deal. Turn the key on that lock, now I can coast. Or is it something that requires constant attention, maintenance, checking in? How am I doing today? Am I doing what you need me to do? And I hope I don't embarrass you, Kath. One little ritual Kath and I have is, have I told you yet today that I love you? We do it every day. Because it's important you don't assume ever, ever, ever that others know how you perceive them. If you want to stay connected to somebody else and let them know where they're at in your life, you've got to let them know. Can't you see it on my face? Well, yeah, but if I don't recognize nonverbal cues, my ears work better. It feels better to hear it. Make sense? Let me show you something with you that I call the contribution principle. And this is a little paradigm that helps prepare your child to think not only in terms of your relationship, but also forward in terms of working in a larger context and ultimately thinking ahead to a career. Okay? And here's the paradigm. Then we'll take a question. Teach your child that we're all in the same business as people. We're in the business of exporting and importing goods and services. The things that we export are the parts of ourselves that we share, that we put out there, that we contribute. Are you exporting generosity? Are you exporting honesty? Are you exporting happiness? And then what do you import? Do you import criticism? Do you import the generosity of others? When you look at what you watch on TV, read online or in the newspapers, what you think between your own two ears, what are you importing? When I read on the social media, I'm on those different sites, the people that are mad about what happened on a fictional show, They have imported something that they have allowed to change their experience of life in a way that does not serve them. And they continue to do it. There's different sporting events going on, people going online to curse out a certain player for having an imperfect moment. How could you have blown that shot? Man, what are they paying you for? I would love for someone to follow them around on their average day with a camera and invite the viewing audience to give similar feedback. Why criticize someone else for having an imperfect moment? What does that say about what you likely say to yourself when you experience the same thing? What are you exporting to the world? What are you importing? When you eventually choose a career, I don't care what it is. If you are a waiter or waitress, if you're an attorney, if you're taking tolls for the tollway, I don't care what it is. When you start, you ask yourself, what is my contribution? What am I exporting to the world? When I show up, what does it look like? Am I blaming? Am I negative? Am I defensive? Am I reacting? Is that what I export? If I do, what am I going to import? Maybe a lot of resentment, a lot of hard feelings from other people. So, you guys all realize that's the business you're in as human beings? Import and export? Every single moment. There's a hand over here.
Yeah. My daughter is in a job situation where she's assuming that everybody's mad at her and that they're going to fire her because they're not happy with her. And so what she wants to do is she wants to quit the job because she's being in turmoil on the job and off the job. She's just thinking about it. So as her mother, I'm actually talking about the assumptions thing that you just talked about before. As her mother, how do I help her?
Well, what do we know about assumptions? And not that net clever little analogy. An assumption is taking the bold step of reading someone else's mind incorrectly. And when you assume somebody thinks something or feels something and you have not asked them, is that reliable? One of the first things for her to understand is, how does she take in information? How does she decide what information is accurate versus inaccurate? Because it sounds like she is relying on herself to be the sole source of input. Because there are 4 relationships, right? There's your own experience, your own thinking. Other people can give you information. The environment gave us a heck of a lot of information this morning. Your community, what does your community think? What are the family values here? What are the values of this community? What are the rules? What are the laws? So she's trying to make decisions about how somebody else feels without bringing them into the conversation. So if she's thinking, okay, well, they don't like me, they're mad at me, they're going to fire me, she's having a 2-person conversation between her ears. Why make decisions about a relationship with another person when that person's not even part of the dialogue? Well, I'm going to quit because you're going to fire me anyway. Really? When did we have that conversation? Oh, I had it right here. Doesn't make sense, defies all logic or any rational thinking, and yet we still do it. Why? Why not involve the other person in the conversation? Because they might be angry at you. They might be upset that you asked the question. They might get defensive. So instead of risking answering the question, clarifying, and having them be angry at you, you just decide they're going to be angry at you. You beat yourself up for no good reason, make yourself miserable, and act accordingly. And there's a lot of complexities to that. It's not as simple as saying, well, you shouldn't assume. When you are avoiding asking somebody for feedback, and you avoid it to that extent, it stands to reason that you are assuming, again, the feedback you're going to get is negative, the feedback is personal, The feedback is a statement on your worth. And you don't want to feel that you are unimportant, that you don't matter. So again, it's those beliefs about what feedback means. Is a person giving you feedback about the situation? Something's not working in the situation? Or something's wrong with you? We talked earlier about problem solving, teaching your children problem solving. If they think they are the source of problems, as opposed to the human condition is a source of problems, they don't want help in solving problems because they don't want to be reminded they are the problem. And they want to be independent and fix all the problems themselves because if they can solve all the problems, they'll no longer be a problem. They'll suddenly be good enough. So you define problems as, hey, problems happen, problems exist. But what if your child believes, I'm the problem? You need to clarify with your child, what is their belief about that? How did this problem occur? How did it come to be? Well, it's because I'm stupid. Now you could say, oh, that's not true. You try and move right past the feeling instead of saying, that's interesting. Why do you believe that? Because if you don't change the belief, you can't change their perception or what they're going to do about it. Okay? Let's hand back here. Somebody step on a cricket?
I'm not a parent, but I'm a teacher, and
Actually, let's step back a second. You are a parent, and let me tell you why.
why?
Because each one of us parents ourselves every single day. We have those scripts from our own folks telling us how we're doing, right? How many of you relived the criticisms from your childhood that your parents told you? So you parent yourself, you just don't know it. Okay, please continue.
And I teach high schoolers, and I primarily work with students with high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome. And I'm just kind of going on what this other lady said. I'm trying to convince the parents that that these students need to learn social skills, functional life skills, about the hidden curriculum and vocational skills, and trying to convince my district to support me in that. And having a hard time getting the parents on board with me because they're so into their students being in honors classes or in AP classes because they are so smart. But I just feel like if they can't brush their teeth or wash their face in the morning, being smart's not going to get them very far in life. How do I get them on board with me?
Who would like to answer her question? Please.
Well, I mean, I can't talk personally about your particular students, but I know for me, I go to the district that I reside in, and they look at me like I'm insane to want there to be life skills for children that have great academic skills. That's a big problem I have with my son. I think the problem is when you go to these IEP meetings, they'll say things like, oh, well, your son has this great skills, or oh, look at how far ahead he is in math. You know, he's got visual spatial skills of a 15-year-old, and he's 6 years old. Well, that's great, but he won't brush his teeth, and he can't dress himself. So, you know, if I can't have these basic life skills, he's not going to be able to be a functioning, independent person. I mean, not that, you know, we all, you know, are interrelated and need help from others, but you want them to be able to function to the highest level possible. I think that there's a real disconnect as what the school's responsibility is as far as teaching those things. They say that it's academics, but when I go and say, hey, it's not just about preparing them for college, it's about preparing for life or whatever holds, you know, next. So I think there probably are a lot of parents that do feel that way. I think it's the school that sits there and tells them, well, you know, you should be worried about academics, and it's academics is what we're responsible, not the other stuff. So I think it, you know, it's...
Let me put in my 2 cents here.
Okay.
One essential thing missing from your conversation is how do we define success? If you say the parents are defining success by passing honors courses, you're defining success by having social skills, vocational skills. You cannot have a conversation about how to get where you're going if you haven't defined the destination the same way. Again, you're assuming, well, this is how I see success. Why wouldn't you see it as success? It makes sense that this should be success. Define that first. Then secondly, define, how do we know when we've done it? How do we know when success is achieved? How do we know we're not quite there yet? When you define those benchmarks in common, then you're looking at it the same way. Because the more you define things in common, the more you're doing it together in partnership. I've sat through too many IEP meetings that are one big blame game. Well, you're not treating my child with respect, and you're not being patient with my child. You need to be nice to my child. Well, I'm sitting here verbally abusing you. I want you to be nice to my child. Hypocrisy. You are modeling for the teacher, demanding the very thing you're not willing to give that person. What are you exporting to the teacher? It's like, well, we're not all Rumpelstiltskin. I'm going to give you thread and you're going to turn it into gold. That's how it works. Don't give it if you don't want your child to get it. It's taken me years to help the team that works with our boys understand I'm not looking for perfection from you or my child. I'm looking for my child to be supported in having reciprocal, effective relationships with their fellow human beings. They can only do that if they can ask for help when they need it, not be shut down, not be blown off, treated with the same respect you want from them. If they don't do their part, let me know and I'll have that conversation. Don't tell me my child is perfect. Don't tell me my child is doing wonderfully if what he's doing is not effective. I don't want him to be perfect. I don't want him to be normal. I want him to be effective. Being effective requires that you acknowledge when things aren't working. And acknowledge if it isn't working, what can be done by the two people who are involved in this relationship to make it more effective. If you can negotiate that relationship with the school staff, with the parents, have that kind of open communication, it's much easier to stay on the same page because you aren't afraid of upsetting each other. And when you think that your job as a teacher is to convince them of something, what you're telling them is, I need to get you to disregard your thinking on the matter and incorporate mine. It's important that you have a shared understanding. It isn't about being right or wrong. It's about what's going to work for us and working effectively together to help raise this child to be an effective member of the school, your family, and society, to get their needs met and meet the needs of others, to be an effective importer-exporter in life. Make sense? Okay. Any other questions, comments? Anybody want to say, what are you talking about?
That was one thing I was talking about earlier, too. As far as the schools go, they want to teach the children, let me rephrase that. They want the children to demonstrate independence, but at the same time, they forget there's a step in between demonstrating independence and where they are. And that's the teaching part, which is what she's talking about. So if the teachers in the school can get on the same sheet of music and saying, okay, what is your goal? Is your goal independence? How are we going to achieve that? And a lot of times there are certain categories that teachers put on parents, parents put on teachers, or school systems put on parents, and parents put on school systems. And in those things, honestly, the school has my daughter many more hours a day than I do. They expect me to fill in the spaces that they couldn't fill in during all those hours, and they expect me to fill in spaces that I'm supposed to fill in naturally as a parent that aren't in their area of perspective anyway. So I think what she's saying is true as far as if she sits down and discusses, what is our goal with this child? Is our goal to make this a successful, independent child? If that's the goal, if that's what the IEP states, then somehow or another we need to take this your job, my job away and make it all our job because we all share the time with the child.
So the other part of that is, again, we're getting stuck in this word independence. Independence is the goal of doing without other people. When you have children that struggle to connect, why are you measuring success by how readily they are not connected with others? How much they don't rely on other people, how much they don't partner. Success must be measured by how effectively you utilize the resources around you, not how frequently you do without them as though you live in a vacuum. So that value needs to be there first. How are we defining interdependence? What does it look like? And another thing, when you have these cookie-cutter curriculums that we have now, they proceed from the ideal that everyone must have the same skill set. The Every Child Left Behind Act is insane. We are not creating a society of robots where everybody's good at the same stuff. We as human beings are a species of specialists. We all have different skill sets. It is not in service of society to create everyone the same way. We all have our own gifts, our own talents. That's what needs to be taught, nurtured, encouraged. Because when you graduate, your unique contribution is what makes you matter in this world, is what makes you necessary. So hopefully they'll figure that out at some point.
Okay, I need help with my question, so help lead me. My question is basically, when you were talking about nonverbal communication deficits, I have that, and I have a company that communicates with me when something's wrong, and over the phone, and I am just like really struggling to get them to communicate so I can be more effective, and I'm not out there 12, 14 hours a day trying to get the job done. And I don't really, it's like they don't have time to talk to me. And I'm just like so frustrated and feeling like a failure because I can't get them to communicate with me.
So you said they communicate with you when you've done something wrong?
Yeah, when they hired me, they said, well, we'll let you know if somebody complains or you did something wrong. But they never really lead me.
So clearly this is not a company that specializes in leadership training?
No, I'm part-time temporary, and that's how I'm treated.
See, I worked for a supervisor, my last public sector job, where he believed no news was good news.
Yeah, that's their philosophy.
Okay? So how does that work for you guys?
I'm lost.
How do you learn what your strengths are, where you're making your contribution, where you have the greatest benefit if the only feedback you get is where you're not contributing, not benefiting, not being effective? You can't. Because the message you get, the feedback you get is in our relationship, you're a screw up. Because when I seek you out, when I talk to you, it's to tell you how you messed up. How can you believe going to the job? How can you begin your day saying, I'm going to step up today and be a contribution. I'm going to use these gifts because these are the gifts that I know are the greatest value to my employer and my customers because that's what they give me feedback on. Because if they only give you the feedback they're giving you, this is what your day looks like. Okay, I have to try not to do this today. I don't want to do that again because if I do, the boss is going to yell at me. If all you think about is what you're not going to do, what are you giving your attention to? You're giving your attention to creating the thing that you don't want. Okay, all together now, don't think about elephants. Don't do it. If you're doing it, stop it right now. Don't think about an elephant again. I'm telling you, right now. Okay, who is able to not think about an elephant? Even if you did for a second, didn't it slip back in there? Why? Because that's where your focus was. If you're trying to grow a garden, and all you're focusing on are the weeds, don't be surprised when the flowers die, because the weeds are what's getting your attention. So the feedback to give your employer is, let me know what worked for you today? How did I make your job easier today? What can I do for you to make your customers happy with you? Don't screw up. Okay, well, I'm on board with that. But if I wasn't screwing up, how would I know it? What would I be doing instead? Because you ultimately want them to tell you what's working. Make sense? Oh, hands at the same times. I can't prioritize. You two are going to have to arm wrestle. Okay, let's start there.
Going back to self-advocacy, we have an 11-year-old Asperger's in a high-functioning autism school. How do we get them, for an example, he's allowed to see his therapist whenever he wants. When the therapist is unavailable to him, how do we get him to accept the disappointment and to cope with that? Because he'll come home angry at her that she didn't come to see him or he didn't get a chance to see her. So how do we get him to accept that it's just maybe she was busy, maybe she had another child to attend to?
Okay. So do you want him to accept the fact that his inflexible expectation was not met? Or do you want to change the expectation?
Well, I'd like to change the expectation and just say that some things just kind of come up. You know, maybe there was something else she had to attend to or, you know, something along those lines.
Okay. So a child that is rigid, likes predictability, wants things to happen the same way all the time, and feels that the world will implode if that doesn't happen, how effective is it going to be to say, well, sometimes things change? Because their belief is that they can't change. They must be consistent, they must be reliable.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, did you want to add to that, or is another question?
No, it was actually the previous.
Let me finish that statement first. The way I do it with our kids is in that belief. The reason why we choose to do things the way we do is because we say, if I do it this way, I'm going to have this experience. If I know it's going to happen, it always happens, then I know I'm going to be safe, then I know I can count on people, then I know it'll be okay. If it doesn't happen, I can't trust people, I won't be safe, and life is a dangerous place. My guess is, and I know this has happened with my kids and probably yours as well, when things don't happen that way, those outcomes that they feared do not occur. The world did not implode. The person is still trustworthy, and they're still here. What they need to experience in that moment is their own resilience. The fact that it happened and they survived. They got through it. They were frustrated. It didn't work for them, but guess what? You're still here. And you don't prefer it. It's not ideal. It's not comfortable. But you can do it. And if the person's not available then, when will they be available? So again, it's the belief around why must it be that way? Because to simply tell them, well, you know, don't think of it that way, think of it this way, before you've even identified why they think about it as they do. You can't change a belief that you don't even know exists. Understand what it is, why it is, what purpose it serves. Because 9 times out of 10, the beliefs we have are absurd. But we don't identify them, we don't examine them, we just have them. And allow them to limit us throughout the course of our lives and our relationships. Okay. Question here?
Yeah, going back to the previous thing about the work-related environment, you said one question to ask a boss would let me know how I made your job easier today. Are there any other questions that would be helpful in that circumstance?
Well, clarification, in my opinion, is something that needs to happen throughout the day. How am I doing so far today? You know, anything you'd like me to do differently? Anything you'd like to give me feedback on? Because you can have that comment or that conversation beginning of the week, but a lot of things happen after that. A person might forget you even had that conversation. Oh yeah, that's right, yeah, you did tell me about it, but you know, I had interactions with 100 other people and they kind of slipped my mind. So you need to keep it fresh. Check in. Request the feedback. but also be prepared to get information that allows you to be effective. Because if you ask for feedback simply to feel good, to get a compliment, is that all you're going to get? Give me your honest opinion. Tell me what I want to hear. No, be honest. Tell me what you're really thinking, but only if it makes me feel good. Ask for feedback, being prepared to get the feedback that is an honest representation of that person's experience. And also, if you ask a lousy question, you'll get a lousy answer. If it's too open-ended, too vague, be very specific. But keep in mind that your job is to be effective. Help me know what I can do differently or continue to do the same way for our relationship to continue to work. Okay? Now, when it comes to, I saw a hand here. Let me recap again to make sure that we understand what we're learning so we can wrap it around some things. So there are 5 main P's of parenting, 5 pillars. One of the main ones is, but the first one is preparation. We want to prepare our children for the world. Prepare them for the real world, which hopefully we've divined by now, depends on where you find yourself. The real world for people in Afghanistan right now is very different than the real world for us. The real world is defined by the resources you have available to you. If you live in the deserts of Africa, the options you have for living your life are very different than the options that you might have living in Silicon Valley. The people there, their gifts, their resources, the financial institutions available to you. So remember that what you define as real is your subjective experience with the world. It's based on your biases, what you believe is possible in life, based on your own limiting beliefs. Typically, what allows us to achieve more than anybody ever thought was possible is because we decided to find out for ourselves what the limits were instead of taking your word for it. Did you get that? So when we're preparing our children for the world, keep that in mind. Am I exporting limitations to my child? Am I assuming that this label of autism defines what is possible for my child? That the more I study autism, the more I study and become a master of this box my child has been placed in. I know everything about your limitations. I know everything about what you can't do. I know everything about who you can't be and what you can't accomplish. One thing that has radically shifted about my life quite recently is I went for 35 years without knowing anything about the spectrum. I knew I didn't like social situations. I knew I didn't have too many friends. I knew I was misunderstood a lot. Then my firstborn son entered first grade and began having meltdowns, running out of the room, threatening teachers, saying awful things he'd never said before. So there was an assessment. We learned about this thing called Asperger's. Then I learned that according to the psychiatric community, a lot of these unique characteristics that I just thought before were just me now had a label and a value judgment attached to them. These unique set of characteristics and quirks, we have decided they're a syndrome. We've decided they're a disorder. And we decided that that part of you is not good enough. This wonderful book called the DSM-4, yes, it has its mixed blessings, because the medication I take for something called ADD has been a godsend to my life. But on the flip side, if I were to believe that those descriptions of those characteristics, called ADD or Asperger's, if I valued them the same way the people who constructed that definition valued them, I would think that I am forever disenfranchised from things in life because a group of people smarter than me said so. Well, you know what? They're human beings. They're human beings that don't know me, don't know what I'm capable of, have no idea just how far I'm willing to go and push myself to be more and do more. So what I learned about myself is after I learned about the Asperger's and said, oh man, so many answers, this is great, I need to learn everything I can about Asperger's. And what I did was effectively climb inside a box for 5 years. I climbed inside a box that told me, this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be. And I need to find other people that have similar limitations so we can talk about our limitations. I need to raise my kids to understand their limitations. Parents would come to me and say, I need you to help me help my child accept their limitations, their disability. And there were so many problems I had with that because why would I want to think so little of myself? Why would I want to think so little of my kids? Then it occurred to me, what was I like, what was my life like before I knew that term, Asperger's? My life was filled with possibilities. Because before that, I was just a human being. I had all the same chances everybody else did. There were some tools that I didn't have. Maybe if I had the tool, maybe I wouldn't have utilized it the same way everybody else did. But maybe I would find a new way to do it. Maybe I would bring something unique to the table that nobody had ever thought about before. I could be the Apple computers of our relationship. Innovative, outside the box. But the first requirement of being outside the box is you first need to know that you're in one. And what you do to keep yourself there. What keeps you there is any belief about yourself that says you can't. No label can tell you who you are or who your child is. Nobody else has the right to tell you what you cannot do. Temple Grandin, one of my personal heroes as a kid, put her in an institution because some narrow-minded physician looked at her and said, who you are is all you're going to be. Where your child is at now is their present, not their future. So you can think about the future, what they need to be, what they need to learn, where they need to go, and the whole time you're ignoring where they are. This is the starting point. This is where you begin, this moment, this interaction with what I'm exporting to you now, what you're importing from me, and the reverse. Now, there's a lot of paper here that I had a lot of stuff on that I could have talked about. But this was before I arrived at this moment. See, we make a lot of plans about where we're going. We're thinking ahead. You ever hear that quote? Life is what happens when you're making other plans. What that refers to is the fact that you spend time planning your life instead of living your life. The conversation we had today didn't follow the blueprint, didn't follow the rules, didn't follow the design. What did it follow? It followed the needs of this moment as best we could, based on our conversation with each other. What we asked of each other, what we asked from each other. We do the best we can in the moments we're given with what we consciously bring into that space. We did that today. Hopefully you do that with each other. You do it with your children. Well, I want to give you one last thought. Actually, two final thoughts. And then Marie's going to come up and explain a couple things. One thing I want you to keep in mind for yourselves as well as for your children. When you no longer define yourself by a label, a diagnosis, your gender, your religion, or anything else, when you don't define yourself according to those, it'll be a lot easier for people to not define you so limited either. When you think of yourself as a human being, you allow yourself to share more of yourself with the world. People can see more of you. People also learn it's okay to give you more of themselves. because you set the stage for that. And I also want to leave you with this opportunity. Something that we've done today, something that I hope you take with you from now on. At no other time in all of history, in all of the universe, have you been given this incredibly precious opportunity. That opportunity is to be yourself in this moment. So please use that opportunity wisely. It has been a privilege having this relationship with you today. Thank you very much.
First of all, we'd like to thank all of you for spending your morning here with us, but I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. What we did here today was start the conversation. What happened in this room was fantastic, and it allowed us to connect and be supported in ways that we may not have been supported before. But what you do with this information outside of this room is really where it starts to be a good investment of your time. Only 30% of what we did up here is our job. 70% of our job is giving you the tools, the resources, the accountability, and the sounding boards to implement it in the families, the students, the children, in yourself. So we're going to be here at the front of the room to continue to connect with you, provide you tools, make sure that we've got some opportunities for you to get these things plugged in. Have any of you ever been to a conference where you came and you got all excited? It was like church camp. You walked out and you're like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and you're a weekend and you're like, that was a great idea. How on earth do I make it happen in the real world, which I'm now suddenly existing very much in my present and very much frustrated. Brian has some great tools to help you get through that, as well as some opportunities for some personal work. And there are some exclusive deals that we are offering just for the people in this room at this conference. We appreciate that you all probably have friends with similar needs and issues, but we really believe in showing up for the people who show up. So the special offers that we have for you today are exclusive to this group of people. If you have a family member that's dealing with the same thing, talk to us. We'll see if we can't work something out, but this really is for you here and for your time investment here. We will be trying to get to everyone, so please understand that there's a lot of you and only a couple of us, so this isn't a great time for stories. We do want to hear your stories and connect with you, but this simply is not the best time because we're going to make sure that we can help each and every one of you before you have to get out of here and grab a bite to eat. So you can start lining up now. We're going to make sure that you're each taken care of, but please, we need to connect with you before you walk out this door because we want to show up 100% for you, just like you intend to walk out of this room and show up 100% for your family. So with that being said, thank you all again so much for your time, and one more hand for Brian. That was fantastic.